Hi, I'm Arhan Babar,
And I'm Zoya Trehan.
and today we're here with Mr. Ashim Bery. He has over a decade in experience in youth engagement, and in fact, he took us on a trip to the Yamuna Glacier earlier this year.
So, today we're going to be talking about trees specifically. So, we know that trees give us oxygen and they give us shelter, but beyond that, what makes them so valuable?
Firstly, thank you guys for organizing this, for having me on board. To answer your first question about trees, I work a lot with trees. So I work in nature, I work in forests, work with young people like you all on different things to do with the environment. But also one of the main areas of focus for me has been, working around specific to, because it's Delhi where I live. So looking at Delhi as a city, kind of trees that grow here, what is native, what's non-native, and that's something we'll talk about later. To answer your question about the value of a tree, for many years it was just the timber that people would look at, but actually now I know we were having this discussion earlier also about how the Supreme Court has put a certain monetary value to a tree at 74,500 rupees. So imagine there are some trees that are about 100 years old, which have a value of over a crore, which in terms of monetary value. So when you look at a tree, it's not just shade and oxygen anymore. Of course, it hasn't been ever, but like now, awareness has reached a point where we've understood that these trees give you so much more. So whether it's to do with general cooling of areas, of urban areas, looking at a shaded area in a colony that has dense canopy, it almost 2 to 4 degrees cooler that space can actually become if you have that kind of green cover there. Similarly, what these trees do is with the expansive root network that these trees also have, is that they prevent soil erosion. They also help in groundwater recharge, which to a city like Delhi is a huge concern, because I don't know if you guys know, but like Niti Aayog, which is a governing body, an environmental body, it had actually predicted that by 2020, Delhi as a city will run out of groundwater altogether. So we need, this is another reason why you need more of these trees to actually help in recharging that groundwater. Many other things. I mean, trees, biodiversity count increases, bird count increases, a lot of butterflies, a lot of insects, a lot of microorganisms in the soil fertility as well. All of that is reliant on a tree network. So in many ways, a tree is actually an ecosystem in itself. So to have that in your city, to have as many as possible, and to also have trees specific to the environment, to the ecology of the space you're in. So Delhi is a semi-arid zone, semi-arid region, falls in the Aravalli belt in many ways. So we have what we call the ridge, which is something we'll talk more about. So the ridge is an extension of the Aravallis, where the Aravalli finishes. So the Aravalli range starts in Gujarat, Rajasthan, Haryana, ends in Delhi. And at Delhi, there's an extension that forms, which is a geological formation known as the ridge. So we have this huge forest actually, which is divided into different zones. You have the central zone, you have the south central zone, you have the northern zone, and then you have the southern zone. There are 4 zones of the ridge. And it's a huge resource of the city, with largely 2 resources of the city. One is the river and the other is the ridge. So River Yamuna and the ridge. So the entire city built around this ecosystem. So yeah, the value of a tree, of course, is immense. We need to keep planting as many as possible and make sure that we're planting native to the region. Yeah.
So, talking about planting trees, we began this discussion before we started recording. Would you classify Delhi as a green city, and if not, why?
Maybe 20, 30 years ago, yes. Or many people still say Delhi is a green city. Delhi is, everywhere you look around, you see you have trees, you have parks, you have forests. But in many ways, you have to define what that green cover is. Is a green cover a small shrub? Is it a sub tree? Are they grasses? Is it a park? So I would say Delhi at the moment has a deficit in terms of green cover compared to where it should be. Also because there's so much of development post, I would say 2010 onwards, or slightly before 2010, before Commonwealth Games. When Commonwealth Games were happening in Delhi, there's large scale development projects that happened, whether it's construction of the Akshardham temple, of stadiums, road widening, BRT, malls, all kinds of things. City evolved a lot from somewhere around 2006 to 2010, which became what is called a work in progress as a city, as a result of which a lot of trees were cut down. A lot of what the city looked like has changed, and now we're in 2025, where there's large-scale construction that's happening, there are development projects happening all around. So coming back to your point about what green cover could be, it's important for us to understand that green cover cannot be just shrubs or sub trees or hedges that you're planting all around. Firstly, they're not necessarily native to the city, and secondly, you're losing out on a lot of tree canopy cover. So if, for example, when you're on the metro and you're going towards Gurgaon, when you're at Ghitorni, Arjangarh, you see this vast expanse of green cover, which looks like green cover, and there are lots of trees that you see, but actually that's a tree called Prosopis juliflora that has taken over a large part of Delhi and NCR region. And this is actually what you also call Vilaiti Kikad, which is actually an invasive non-native plant. So what it does is it grows fast, invasive in the sense it takes over, it dominates over other species that may belong to the city of Delhi. And it grows fast because it has seed pods that spread very fast. So a lot of nilgai, for example, that are roaming around in the forest, they actually eat those seed pods and then poop those seed pods around the entire forest area. And it spreads. It's very fast growing. So you'll see a lot of the green cover of Delhi in many ways is Prosopis juliflora, which is now a lot of environmentalists, a lot of activists, a lot of scientists are working towards phasing that Prosopis juliflora out and introducing back a lot of native variety of plants.
So you mentioned the Prosopis juliflora being invasive and not native. What are native, like, trees that we could encourage planting or try and plant in Delhi that are more helpful to the environment? And what is the danger of these invasive species versus the benefit of native species of trees?
So, firstly, what is native? Native in the sense something that belongs to a specific region, or in many ways has evolved over time to adapt to that space. So, looking at a tree, for example, like a jamun tree, many people might not classify it as a native tree, but it's something that has actually for many years existed in Delhi. In a lot of avenues, you'll see jamun now, and you see jamun grows well in Delhi. Similarly, a mango tree. Similarly, there are a lot of other trees like pilkhan, like peepal, a lot of ficus variety trees. So pilkhan, peepal, bargat, banyan. These are trees that have existed in the city that they don't necessarily need to adjust. They have been in the city for many years, and they are suited to the soil type that Delhi has. So semi-arid zone. So a lot of plants also in the Aravali belt that you see, whether it's a dhok or a palash or a imli. I mean, there are at least about 100 different kinds of these thorny shrubs or sub-trees or trees that grow in the Aravali belt that are native to that specific region, but a lot of people don't know necessarily what these trees are and what they can do. Many times people want to plant ornamental. So for example, planting, for many people, like growing bottle brush or growing something like a palm tree. Like we face this a lot when we do plantations at a large scale. We go to a school or we go to a public park and we bring these kind of plants, native plants that many people don't know about. But a lot of people come to us and say, why don't you plant palm? And what their vision is that they want to make Delhi look like Dubai. But they don't understand that Delhi and Dubai have very different conditions. And you're not going to grow, a row of palm trees in Delhi. They may not necessarily, they won't work. As a result of which you have to replant. So whether it's palm or it's other, like Prosopis juliflora, of course, not many people plant at large scale, but there are many other non-native. Eucalyptus for many years is a tree that was being planted in Delhi that actually has depleted a lot of Delhi's groundwater because it takes up a lot of groundwater. So in many ways, planting the correct kind of species is something that's of vital importance, and it's for all of us, whether it's citizens who are planting or organizations that are planting, or it's the government or the municipality. I feel like there is awareness that's kicked in now. A lot of people are looking at planting the right kind. But it also depends on where you're planting, how you're planting, and most importantly, how you're maintaining. It's not about just going and planting a species and then forgetting about it. A lot of these species, like a peepal, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but like some peepal trees, you guys know what a peepal tree is?
Yes, of course.
So have you ever noticed that a peepal tree sometimes is growing almost out of a roof or bricks?
I've seen
Yeah,
that.
of course. In fact, at my house where I live, a peepal tree sprouted on somebody's terrace.
Yeah, so seed dispersion again, like it's going from one, maybe a crow has taken a seed of one plant and put it in of people and put it into a brick wall. But for the fact that it's growing out of just concrete shows how hardy and sturdy it is and how adaptable it is to Delhi's climate. So it's very important to plant right, plant native, and understand where you are, because if you just plant whatever you want, it's okay to green, but what exactly is that greenery and what is it giving you? It's not really giving you anything.
So you told us you lead forest bathing walks for citizens of Delhi. So other than, of course, like you've talked about, being places of shade, being places of oxygen, being biodiversity hubs? Or do you believe that trees hold some other psychological value?
So, just for context for viewers and for listeners and for you guys as well, forest bathing is something. Have you studied about forest bathing? Do you ever heard of it before?
No.
This is actually a Japanese technique that started in the 1980s to cope with increasing rates of depression in the country. And the idea was simple: you get people to walk in the forest, you get people to be more mindful, to understand what a city forest looks like, to move around in nature, be connected with nature in many ways, and to slow down. It's almost a way of slowing down. So the kind of activities that you do as part of forest. So I'm not a trained forest bathing trainer, as a guide who's gone through. My experience with forest bathing was in 2019 when I went on a seminar to the United States, and I spent 2 weeks in New York and Chicago, and they trained us a little bit on what this process is about. And I thought, as a musician, I play this instrument which is very meditative in many ways, the sound. Why don't I fuse that with my love for nature and organize walks where I take just citizens of Delhi who are interested, curious about plants, about forests, take them inside a forest and spend 3 to 4 hours there, just being very mindful, walking slowly, focusing on your breath, focusing on your walking. Because we lead such fast-paced lives, we often don't focus on these things. We don't realize your day just goes by, and you're not looking at your surroundings necessarily. You're not looking at your trees around you. It's there in your city. You take it for granted, but you don't actually get to spend any kind of time with them. So the idea is just to go there, be with nature for 3 to 4 hours, really, really slow down. And the kind of reactions I've got from people who've gone on these experiences is that, in many ways they started viewing their city differently, or they started viewing their body, their own heart rate, their own footsteps, the way they walk, the way they breathe, and nature around them very, very differently than how they previously imagined it to be. So it's been a very interesting experience leading these walks, and one of the reasons, like I said, why I do them, similar to why it was introduced in Japan as a concept, is just to get people to be more aware of the greenery around you, the forests around you.
That sounds really incredible. So you were talking about the Delhi Ridge specifically, and because we're based out of Delhi and you're based out of Delhi, I want to bring that up again. What is the exact significance of the Delhi Ridge?
So, like I said, Delhi Ridge, it's an extension of the Aravallis, which have existed for millions of years. And the ridge is a very, very important resource because it's almost like the lung of the city of Delhi and Gurgaon in many ways. Like all this green cover that we've talking about, a large part of it is the Aravalli. So like a Sanjay Van park that you visit, or an Aravalli Biodiversity Park that you've gone to, or the Kamala Nehru Ridge that's there in the northern part of Delhi, where Delhi University is all part of a network called the Ridge in Delhi. And that has 4 different zones. So there's the central zone, south central zone, there's the northern zone, and then there's the southern zone. Northern zone is mainly northern part of Delhi. Southern and southern central is where Japana City Forest is, where your next to Qutub Minar, Sanjay Van is. And your central zone is where Chanakyapuri area is. So there's another segment of the ridge there. So it's 80 square kilometers in size, I think, in terms of overall landscape of the space. And a large part of the ridge for many years was a mining site in many ways. There's a stone called quartzite stone which was used for many years. Building a lot of cities were established using that stone. And gradually it became this open forest in the city that everyone sees as just wild jungle with wild growth. But a lot of people have also over the years settled around the ridge. We're looking at different kinds of encroachments. There's what you classify as a rich encroachment or a poor encroachment, where you have slums that have set up there, workers that are living there. At the same time, you also have rich bungalows that have been set up, like in Civil Lines or in Chanakyapuri, along what is the ridge. For example, even the Ambience Mall and those 3 malls together in Vasant Kunj are all they're built on ridge land. They're built on forest land. So the ridge becomes important, of course, needs to be protected. It's, like I said, it's the lungs of the city. A lot of native plants that we spoke about earlier are central to the ridge, exist in the ridge, don't exist in a park in your neighborhood, but exist in the ridge. It's important to bring those also to parks as well. But it's as vital a resource as can be. Unfortunately, it's been depleting a lot. Like a lot of our green cover or the ridge is being depleted more and more year after year in the name of various development projects that are happening or encroachments that are happening. So it's important also to put certain norms, certain boundaries, certain restrictions on what the ridge is for, who has access to the ridge. It should be protected land at the end of the day, because it is, there's whether it's the soil or it's the trees or it's the biodiversity, the bird count, all of that gets affected the moment you decide to step foot into the ridge. So another example is in, I think this was 2018, 17 and 18. I don't know if you guys remember this or heard about this, or maybe even were part of a protest. I don't know, because a lot of school students actually protested and went on to the Aravali Biodiversity Park in Gurgaon, because there was a plan to build a road connecting the Gurgaon-Jaipur highway to MG Road, which would cut through the Aravali Biodiversity Park in Gurgaon. Now, the Aravali Biodiversity Park in Gurgaon is a very sensitive zone in specific because it's a park, it's a forest rather, city forest that has been built by citizens together. So 20 years ago, that space was a mining site, part of the ridge, but a mining zone. Like it was barren, there was some bit of Prosopis juliflora, but no native specific species. And a group of citizens together, they work as an organization now called I Am Gurgaon for the last 20 years, and they run some phenomenal work there. So they are friends of ours at Swechha. We've worked with them before. We helped them during the protest as well. And the idea was simple, that you can't build a road. If you build a road connecting through this forest goes for a toss completely. Entire lung of Gurgaon, native species of Gurgaon, Aravali belt of Gurgaon is just going to be cut through in the name of development. So there's no way. So there was a human chain, thousands of students, citizens got together and just stood in the forest and said, not in our name, not on our watch. We're not going to allow this to happen. So it's great to see that people are standing up in many ways, realizing the importance of the ridge, the importance of planting native species. But I still feel there's a long way to go, and at the rate at which we're going, unfortunately, that green cover is being depleted more and more.
This leads pretty well into our next question about how can development and greenery coexist in Delhi?
Yeah, so, again, this is a counter question that comes to us a lot, or comes to, so for example, I just said that you can't build a road. A lot of people say, then how are you going to, how is development going to happen if you don't build that highway, you don't build that road? I'm not saying don't build the expressway or don't build the whole road, but understand the context in which we're at right now. We're breathing extremely toxic air almost throughout the year. We're losing out on one of the most important resources the city has, which is its green cover. We know that there's a deficit of trees. We know that native trees don't exist. What happens is that you build the road, and in the name of building the road, you say, okay, I'm going to plant 300 trees in the outskirts of Delhi somewhere, or in a completely different zone, or in completely different land altogether, which is compensatory forestry in many ways. But the challenge with that is that it's not really, what are you developing for? I mean, in 20 years, 30 years, what is that expressway going to give you beyond just not having any trees there? You may not survive with the kind of air that you're breathing. So it's important to first understand in terms of actual master plan of the city. Don't tamper with it in many ways. Rework the city plan if it has to, keeping in mind city, when you look at city infrastructure, tree is also an infrastructure of city. It's not, you can't view it as just a tree. It's part of the city. So if your building is there, and your mall is there, and your hospital is there, and your road is there, and your school is there, your tree is also there. So you can't just chop 16,000, 20,000 trees, build an expressway and say, okay, I've planted baby trees in the name of this development project on the outskirts of Delhi somewhere, or on the banks of Yamuna, or we'll deal with it 10 years later or 20 years later, because that 100-year-old tree value that you've chopped is going to outweigh that development project at all. So first things first is to understand the tree as actual infrastructure. Second is to build around it. In many ways, in many cities, you've seen a lot of older trees specifically are part of cities' heritage, cities' culture. So they're not, deforested or chopped. A lot of city forests are considered as part of the city's culture. So, you can't build a road through it. So you build around it. You build around a park, or you build around a forest that you have in the city of Delhi. And that's possible. We've seen cases everywhere else in the world where it's happened. At the same time, you can also go vertical in many ways, given the buildings that we have. We don't see that happening. So, Babar, you were mentioning earlier about how there's that discrepancy that you see where certain parts of Delhi, like the central part of Delhi, or Lutyens Delhi, or South Delhi where we are, if you look at it even on Google Maps, you'll see green cover all around you. You'll see trees, you'll see greenery. But if you zoom out a little further, you go towards West Delhi, you go towards East Delhi, suddenly you'll see that they're just buildings, there's concrete. Or if you look at Gurgaon as a city, it's called a concrete jungle today. You don't see a single tree. So remapping the way of looking at a city, because why does Gurgaon flood every year? Why does, Delhi and many parts of Delhi go underwater every year? You don't have trees that are actually recharging a lot of your groundwater. You also have construction that's happening on floodplains of Yamuna, which is exploiting a natural resource again. That sole purpose is to regulate floods. So all of that needs to be factored in. Of course, environment, of course, climate, of course, soil type, of course, type of trees, biodiversity, bird count. All of that needs to be factored in when you're looking at these projects. It can't be that नहीं हमें सिर्फ बिल्डिंग बनाने हैं या सिर्फ रोड कंस्ट्रक्ट करने हैं या सिर्फ मॉल बनाना है, because there is a way of working around it. And yeah, the idea of vertical, sorry, I was slipped out at that point, but to actually plant vertically, which means, rooftop gardens, terrace gardens, balcony spaces, promote greenery and all these. There's scope. I mean, we've only seen in the last 5-6 years or 10 years, government nurseries have now started giving free plants to people. But a lot of people don't know about it. Like, I don't know if you guys are aware that...
I did not know that.
So you can actually go to any government nursery in the monsoon, July to, I think, September, October, and you can just take as many plants as you want. Say, I want 100 trees, and you can plant them in your park, and it's free of cost. You can go and pick it up. You just have to tell them where you're going to be planting. And they have the infrastructure. They have the seeds. They have the plants. They have the shrubs, the canopies, whatever it is that you want. Not necessarily all native, but if you want to plant, 20 shrubs in your balcony and green your balcony a little bit, that's still contributing in some way or the other. And imagine if every balcony in your colony does that and every balcony is green, that's going to reflect in that Google satellite image that you see, and that's going to reflect in the overall greening of the city, along with the government introducing more schemes and promoting it in many ways. So there's endless scope with infrastructure and redevelopment.
So other than protesting, like you had mentioned, and this planting of trees, getting seeds from the government nurseries, what else are things that like individuals themselves can take responsibility for and they can actively do to help improve the tree cover of Delhi?
So, a few years ago, the government, what they did is they introduced a scheme where they said that we have 8,000 parks in the city. These are public parks, but we can't manage all of them. Or we'd like for more engagement from citizens in management of these spaces. So what they did is they had a meeting with NGOs and RWAs, Residents Welfare Associations, and they said, we want you guys to consciously adopt some of these spaces. It could be a citizen, it could be a civil society member, it could be anyone. It could be someone from the government as well. But the idea is that all CSOs, RWAs, and the government all work together in redeveloping, redesigning, reimagining some of these parks. So for context, for the last 5-7 years, as an organization, we also worked on a park in Vasant Kunj, which had less than 5% green cover in around 2008, and almost 20 years later now in 2025, that park, Vimlendu and I just went a few months ago to see that space again. It's a municipality park, MCD run park, which now has 90% green cover. It's transformed. And like that, there are many stories, many organizations, many citizens that are working. I gave you the example of I Am Gurgaon with Aravali Biodiversity Park. So change is possible. People just have to be more aware of these things around them, know more about your trees, be inquisitive, be curious. That's what I would tell you guys. You're young. If you have interest in nature, nowadays with tech, Google Lens, you can Google Lens almost every plant around you and become an expert in many ways, which is great. And it's great that that's picking up. I've seen it in schools. I've seen, very, very young kids just wanting to know what is the benefit of a plant, which butterfly sits on which plant. Should I plant 10 of these in my balcony? Should I create a small butterfly garden in my balcony? So small steps at an individual level. And second point, of course, is asking and demanding from your government, from your authorities, a little bit more action and to be a little bit more proactive. Right now, given the AQI that we have, abhi AQI hai, few months later, it'll again come down to drought and heat wave in the city of Delhi. After that, it'll become extreme rain. So we're living in extremes. We have extreme air quality pollution situation. We have extreme heat wave that'll happen. There'll be extreme cold wave in a few months. It's almost like a calendar of events through the year, where one crisis after the other, and it's important to not look at them in isolation. You can't look at air pollution or issue of waste or issue of water just as one isolated issue. It is a larger problem in the city. So in many ways, of course, protesting is one. But simple actions, just if you feel like there's a tree that's being concretized in your neighborhood, like you have say a pilkhan tree outside your house, but someone has actually, maybe the MCD or the DDA or the RWA or someone has actually gone and paved around the roots, which has caused a problem for the tree, which shouldn't happen. There are organizations like there's a friend of mine who runs an organization called New Delhi Nature Society, based in New Friends Colony, and what he does is very similar to this. You just spot and you stop it. So you spot it and then you stop it. You report it to the authorities. You say that this is illegal. Similarly, a lot of trees you'll see people are nailing different kinds of things onto them, posters and different. So put that to a complete halt. Cutting down, felling of trees. There's I think you're not allowed to cut trees in the name of any kind of work that you're doing in many ways. So if you see it, you report it, and that's one of the things you can do as a citizen, in addition to, of course, planting and being part of initiatives, greening the city, knowing more about your own locality, your own plants, what's native, what's not native, what's good for the environment, what's not necessarily doing anything. So there's a lot that can be done. Yeah.
So I think we're walking away from this with an understanding and appreciation for what can make Delhi a greener city, what makes some parts of Delhi amazing, and overall, just like to thank you for all the things you've told us.
Thank you
much.
guys.
Thank you. And I'm sure that everyone watching is now going to be inspired to plant specifically native trees in their homes and in their balconies and better the city.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I hope that we all, of course, plant native, grow native, bring cities' green cover back to what it should be in many ways. And yeah, I mean, excited to see if you guys take more steps towards that in your school. Build a garden. If you need help from us, we can always come in on board and do that. But you can take initiative on your own. I mean, there's so much that's possible. But yeah, thank you guys for having me, and I hope this was.
It's been amazing.
Yeah.
It's been very enlightening.
So thank you guys
Thank
so
you.
much. Yeah.